The Big Book of Answers, Eras and Their Highlights. When did history begin? History began when human beings were able to document events in writing. Anything prior to the advent of writing is commonly referred to as prehistoric. Humans began to write approximately 3,500 years before Christ, and the Classical Age, which began with the rise of Greek civilization around 2000 BCE. What is the prehistoric era? The term prehistoric era refers to the time before written history began, so it encompasses the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age. The prehistoric era spans the time from about 2 million BCE to roughly 2000 BCE, when the Classical Age began with the rise of the Greek and Roman empires. What is the Paleolithic Age? Paleolithic literally means Old Stone Age, coined by archaeologist John Lubbock, 1834 to 1913, in 1865. It refers to the vast time period when humans used stone tools. It precedes the Mesolithic and Neolithic ages. All three of these time periods, Paleolithic, Mesolithic, and Neolithic, are considered part of the Stone Age. Who came up with the system of classifying older human history into the three ages? Danish archaeologist Christian Jørgensen Thomsen, 1788 to 1865, receives credit for the categorizing early world history into three ages based on the principal tools used by humans. These three periods are the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age. When did humankind first walk on the face of the earth? For decades after the discovery of Lucy in the 1970s, it was thought that humankind first walked the earth about 3 million years ago. But fossil finds in the mid-1990s pushed the evolutionary starting point for humans to more than 4 million years ago. Further, astonishing finds in the early 2000s led researchers to conclude that human ancestors first walked the earth nearly 6 million years ago. In November 1974, American Donald C. Johanson, 1943 to present, made one paleoanthropology's most widely publicized finds when he discovered a partial skeleton at Hadar, Ethiopia. More than 3 million years old, the female skeleton was the most complete hominid fossil ever found, but the skull was not recovered. The creature stood 3.5 feet tall and, although ape-like, had definitely walked upright. When Johansen officially announced his find in 1979, Lucy, named for the Beatles' song Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, which was popular in the camp at the time the fossil was found, became known as the mother of all humankind. Her sex was confirmed by the pelvic bones. Since she was an erect walker, the finding gave certainty to theories that hominids walked erect at 3 million years BCE. After the discovery of Lucy, older hominid fossils were unearthed by researchers in the field. In 1994, anthropologist Meave Lakey, 1942 to present, and her associates found fossils of a 4.1 million year old bipedal species near Lake Turkana, Kenya. These were designated Australopithecus anamensis. Fossils discovered between 1997 and 2001 in the Middle Awash region of Ethiopia were determined to be nearly 6 million years old. In 2001, Johannes Haile Selassie, Cleveland Museum, and co-authors Tim White and Jen Sua, University of Tokyo Museum, reported the monumental findings in the journal Nature. The hominid, named Ardipithecus cadaba, was thought to represent the first species on the human branch of the family tree just after the evolutionary split from chimpanzees. What is the Stone Age? What people commonly refer to as the Stone Age is actually two ages. The Old Stone Age, about 2 million BCE to about 10,000 BCE, and the New Stone Age, 10,000 to 3,300 BCE. It was during these periods that humans used stone tools. During the Old Stone Age, man was evolving from his ape-like ancestors into modern-looking hunter-gatherers. Early modern man's progress continued to the end of the Old Stone Age around 10,000 BCE. Then, as the earth warmed, the hunter-gatherers again revolutionized their way of life. They opted for a more settled existence in which they could exercise greater control over their food supplies. With the coming of the New Stone Age, or Neolithic Age, humans turned to agriculture. The New Stone Age brought profound changes into the development of humans. Neolithic man learned to produce food rather than collect it. People were no longer dependent on hunting, fishing, and gathering wild fruits and nuts for subsistence. They learned to cultivate crops, domesticate animals, make pottery, weave textiles from fiber and hair, and produce more sophisticated tools and weapons by hammering, grinding, and polishing granite, jasper, and other hard stone. More substantial houses and communities, even fortified villages, came into being, laying the foundation for the great civilizations that would follow. Near the end of the New Stone Age, craftsmen in the Middle East learned to make tools and weapons from metal. The world's earliest known man-made copper objects, beads, pins, and awls, were fabricated in Turkey and Iran around 8000 BCE. Archaeological evidence points to copper mining in the Balkans around 5000 BCE. From there, the technology probably spread west, reaching the Alps about 1,000 years later and marking the beginning of the Copper Age, c. 4000 to 2200 BCE. What is the Bronze Age? The Bronze Age, c. 3300 to 2500 BCE, is the period of human culture when man began using bronze metal to make objects, principally tools. The Neolithic Age slowly came to an end as various cultures in Eurasia that had depended on wood, stone, and bone for tools began to develop the techniques for metallurgy. Bronze proved to be an excellent material for making tools and weapons. People in the Middle East learned to produce bronze by mixing tin and copper. Hence, the transition years between the Neolithic Age and the Bronze Age are sometimes referred to as the Copper Age. Bronze had considerable hardness, strength, and density, and it proved more reliable and durable than the stone, wood, and bone tools that had been in use. The Bronze Age lasted until the beginning of the Iron Age. When did the Iron Age begin? The real advent of the Iron Age came not with the discovery of metal in about 2500 BCE, but with the invention of the process of casing or steeling it, probably about 1500 BCE. This happened when it was learned that by repeatedly reheating wrought iron in a charcoal fire and then hammering it, it not only became harder than bronze, but its hardness after long use kept its hardness after long use. Wrought iron was discovered accidentally when smiths found that by hammering the small bead-like pieces of iron left as a residue after smelting copper, they could form the iron particles into a mass. This kind of wrought iron, however, was good only for decorative purposes, and for more than 1,000 years after 2500 BCE, iron remained a precious ornamental metal. Bronze, which was harder and capable of being sharpened to a fine cutting edge, continued to be the metal for tools and weapons. The next technological improvement, which again meant a further hardening of the metal, was the process of quenching it, which involved repeatedly plunging the hot iron into cold water. It was only after this series of discoveries and inventions that the significant impact of iron on culture and civilization was appreciably felt. Because bronze was scarce, it was also costly. Consequently, it was not until iron came into use that humans extended their control over nature. For this reason, iron has been called the democratic metal. Widespread use of iron tools meant a general increase in living standards. For example, the use of iron axes brought about the clearing of forests, and therefore new land came under cultivation. Other significant developments included the application of iron tools to sheep shearing and cloth cutting, and the invention of the lathe, the most fundamental machine tool. The Iron Age lasted until the beginning of the Classical Age, c. 2000 BCE. What were the hallmarks of ancient Egypt? One of the world's oldest civilizations, ancient Egypt developed about 3000 BCE, or 5,000 years ago in the Nile River Valley. It lasted until 332 BCE, when it was conquered by Alexander the Great, 356 to 323 BCE. In that time, Egypt was ruled by 30 dynasties. Most of those dynasties fall into three kingdoms: the Old Kingdom, during the 3rd millennium BCE, the Middle Kingdom, early 2nd millennium BCE, and the New Kingdom, mid-2nd millennium BCE. The kingdoms were followed by intermediate periods, which were times of weakened government or foreign domination. The first dynasty was founded by Menes in 3110 BCE, after he united the rival kingdoms of the Upper and Lower Egypt under his rule and established the capital at Memphis, the present-day village of Mitrahina, 14 miles south of Cairo in northern Egypt. During the Old Kingdom, commerce prospered and the arts flourished, as evidenced by the Great Pyramids at Giza, including the Great Sphinx, which were begun during the 4th dynasty, c. 2500 BCE. The Old Kingdom was followed by a 258-year intermediate period of weak rulers and anarchy, which was ended with Amenemhet I rose to power in 1991 BCE, reunifying Egypt and beginning the Middle Kingdom. During the Middle Kingdom, Egypt launched imperialistic campaigns, expanding its territory and conquering Palestine and Syria in the east. About 1720 BCE, Semitic nomads entered Egypt and wrested power from the pharaohs, establishing the 15th through the 17th dynasties, a peaceful and prosperous period. But the Egyptians expelled this foreign influence, c. 1570 BCE, to establish the New Kingdom. The 200 years that followed were the height of Egyptian civilization, with the cities of Thebes and Memphis regarded as the political, commercial, and cultural centers of the known world. Ancient Egyptians invented a calendar, created a form of hieroglyphic writing, and developed papyrus, paper made from the papyrus plant. Situated along the Nile and south of the Mediterranean Sea, Egyptians also produced early seagoing vessels, but it is their buildings for which this ancient group is renowned. In addition to the Great Pyramids at Giza, the impressive relics that have been discovered include those at Abu Simbel, where King Ramses II, 1303 to 1213 BCE, had 2 temples built out of rock during his reign, c. 1279 to 1213 BCE. Numerous ruins and tombs at Abydos, a complex of temples and shrines at Karnak, part of the site of ancient Thebes, and temples and other buildings at Luxor, also part of ancient Thebes. During the last 700 years of ancient Egypt, c. 1085 to 332 BC, the kingdom increasingly came under foreign domination, which weakened it to the point that Alexander the Great was able to claim it without struggle in 332 BCE.